and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by David Heacock of Filterbuy. David, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so to kick things off, I'd like to start out with your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and what would you say your childhood was like?
Yeah, I'm from Talladega, Alabama, which is a rural town of about 9,000 people. I grew up around a family business and saw the rise of the textile industry, or the textile industry in general in the Southeast, and the decimation of it in NAFTA in the 1990s. And so,
Mm.
and my family kind of had to transform their business at that point in time, and it was pretty formative for me.
Mm. So, what did your involvement look like? I mean, growing up as maybe grade school years, what did that look like in the family business? Were you involved at all?
Um, just observing, I had a grandfather who was from Talladega, Alabama, came back from World War II, and was very proud of that, and
Mm.
was a kind of a pillar in that community. So getting to observe him and how he was treated in that community was definitely important for me. But it's a very small community, as you can imagine, and so
Yeah.
I definitely was trying to get out of there as quickly as possible. And when I turned 18, I moved to the north and ultimately landed in New York City.
Wow. Yes, I'm curious. What brought you to New York City? It was a job opportunity. I saw you went on to George Washington University eventually for college, but what was that for?
Yeah, so I studied economics and statistics in college, and when I graduated, I got a job at Goldman Sachs in the economics research group,
Mm.
and so I started my career at Goldman. I'd only been in New York one time before then. That was for the interview, actually, for Goldman, but
Wow.
I was just, I guess, attracted to the opposite of my childhood, which I think is kind of how it oftentimes happens, and so
Yeah.
I went about as far away from Talladega, Alabama, as you can imagine.
Wow. So I mean, your accolades just starting at Goldman Sachs and then Filterbuy, it's just really incredible. What was that experience like at Goldman Sachs? I mean, what was that first position out of college after graduated?
Well, I'd spent my first 2 years in the economics research group, which is where I really kind of honed my kind of macroeconomics skills, for lack of a better term. But then my third year, I moved to the trading desk, and I spent about 5 years where I ultimately ran the emerging market options trading business.
Mm.
And the takeaway from that, I think, for me is very different than the business that I'm in today, and we can kind of get into that. But the
Yeah.
skills that I learned there are what still carry me to
Mm.
where I am today. And so, kind of building those skills in your formative years, I think, is very
Yeah.
important and can be applied to a lot of different disciplines.
Yeah, definitely. So at this time when you're at Goldman, what did that family business look like in conjunction while you're in New York City? I'm curious, how was that running? Did you go back home and assist in any of that business at that time?
No, I was very far removed from it, and the very long story short is that that business had kind of pivoted into the wood products industry. So there
Mm.
are lots of sawmills in the southeast, for instance, right? And
Yeah.
and so we were basically, or that business was basically supplying those sawmills with the supplies that they need to keep going, like the chemical to treat wood for molding, or
Mm.
things of that nature. In 2012, my family was actually going through the sale of the family business because the kind of second generation, my dad's generation, was retiring and
Mm.
not that interested in it. And there was a private equity firm that was looking at buying it as a small company at the time, and my grandfather was still alive. I was very close with him. He was in his early 90s. He did not want to see it sold. It was kind of traumatic for him.
Yeah.
And so I ended up making a deal to buy the business, and did no due diligence,
Wow.
no nothing. It was just one of
Yeah.
those family transactions where I probably overpaid, but I put basically all the money I had to buy it, and um, you know the rest is history, I suppose.
Wow. So at that time, so around 2012, I take it you left Goldman full time to then jump into the family business. What did that look like for you?
Well, I really had no idea what I was getting into, to be honest with you. And
Yeah.
I guess you talk about starting small, and that's very much what I did. I was basically bought a business that was had a sales force that an average age was about 60 years old.
Mm.
And it was completely relationship driven. Like the only reason that business existed was because of the relationships that those people had built over a long period of time.
Yeah.
I knew that once they were gone, that business was not likely to be sustainable.
Mm.
So I had to kind of start it off with the kind of ticking clock. I've got to do something. And I basically started looking for a product that I could manufacture competitively using that infrastructure and
Mm.
sell it direct to consumer. And at the time, there were big direct to consumer brands like Dollar Shave Club or
Yeah.
Harry's that were getting off the ground. And I ultimately kind of whittled it down to either remanufactured ink cartridges or pleated air
Mm.
filters. And I chose pleated air filters and started working at it, in late 2012, early 2013.
Yeah, I would love to hear from your point of view, like what made you kind of look at ink cartridges and also air filters. I mean, you're talking about Dollar Shave Club. That's something that a consumer uses on a daily basis, but something like an air filter, it's really interesting. It's a hidden product that you might get from your hardware store, especially D2C. What was your POV on coming up with air filter at that point?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I guess I would tell you that to say you don't use an air filter on a daily
Yeah.
basis is perhaps not true. It's just you're not as aware of it as you are
Given.
your
Yeah,
shaving, because
definitely.
there's any building that moves air by definition needs air filters, and that
Yeah,
includes commercial, which is a big part of our business.
definitely.
But what if you remember in the early days, I remember early on that Harry's actually bought a German razor factory at the time because they realized, I think smartly, in order to be truly direct to consumer, you have to own the manufacturing process, right?
Mm.
And so that is by definition, in my opinion, direct to consumer, even though that is not how it oftentimes is in practice. But
Yeah.
for me, it was very important to find something that I could manufacture competitively in Alabama
Mm.
and sell direct to the end user, with the belief being that then I wouldn't have any middleman. Like I was coming from a middleman business, and I could have a sustainable competitive edge.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
air filters are very bulky, as you said,
Yeah.
and they're lightweight, so they're very expensive to ship because they have a high dimensional weight. So
Yeah.
it would not be realistic to import them from China, for instance, which a lot of people import their products from China or other places in Asia.
Mm.
And air filters are protected from that because they are so bulky and logistically complex. So
Yeah.
that was why I honed in on the filter opportunity.
I see. So you jumped over. You mentioned you bought it from your family, but any funding up front? Was there any funding? I think I saw some accolades that it's fully funded by you. Is that correct?
Correct. I basically took all the money I had to buy Talladega Machinery and Supply Company, which was the original business, and have been completely self-funded since then. So we have
Wow.
no outside investors. I've just funded it out of cash flow.
Wow. Let's get into like the first launch day. What did that existing business look like once you then launched? Was it like on Shopify, and then what was that offering of different filters at launch day?
Believe it or not, Shopify at the time was not really an option because they did not have as built out of the
Yeah.
subscription functionality, and the subscription functionality was very important to me because
Yeah.
that was a big part of our offering. So it's actually started out as a custom built WooCommerce platform. I believe WooCommerce is still around.
Mm.
It's a WordPress kind of plugin that allows you to do e-commerce. And then we kind of transitioned into a custom built Python based system.
Mm.
And that's what we run on today, with a React front end for the e-commerce website.
Yeah. Kicking it off at launch. What did that customer base look like for you guys? What was that main target? You mentioned commercial is a big side. Was residential the first launch, or was that a mix? I'm curious.
Well, the product we sell is all commercial grade, but
Mhm.
a lot of our product goes into residential. So like,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of or about 60% of our business originates on Amazon because,
Mm.
60% of product searches in the US originate on Amazon, and our
Yeah.
business basically breaks down in that kind of similar type of percentages. So Amazon is a big channel for us and has been from the very beginning. We're a top 50 Amazon seller,
Mm.
and we only sell our own brand of products, and we do all of our own fulfillment, which also makes us unique, I think.
Yeah.
But Amazon and Filterbuy.com are still our biggest channels today, in fact, but have always been kind of the two big channels from inception.
Yeah, I love it. So your accolades, I mean, in the past 10 years since launch, say, is like extremely impressive. I'm curious what that founding team looked like for you that kind of moved the needle. You mentioned the sales force was relationship driven from the family business prior, but I'm curious what moved that needle at launch for your founding team.
The founding team is me. So,
Yeah,
there really is no other kind of team around me
yeah,
that I had in the beginning. It was kind of a lot of trial and error. I had one person, his name is Gary McDowell. He's now 82 years old. He was 70 when I first started this. I hired him as a consultant because he had some experience in the air filter manufacturing industry. And so he kind of helped me to understand the do's and don'ts. But
mm,
aside from that, we really just kind of figured it out, trial and error, and
yeah,
took it from there. You
yeah,
start small, you compound small wins, and you figure things out.
yeah. I love it. What did that main marketing look like, say, in the early days, especially when it was that small, lean team? Maybe socials wasn't as big as it got in 2018 forward. I'm curious, what did that look like for filters?
Yeah, so social was essentially non-existent for us at the time. It's
Yeah.
primarily what I call intent-based marketing, and you still works today. So it's Google or Bing traffic or Amazon traffic. Actually, I guess in the beginning Amazon didn't even have their ad platform, so that kind of came later. So it's primarily Google paid ads and SEO
Mhm,
were big. So
mhm,
that's kind of you look at our name Filterbuy. We were originally Air Filterbuy, and
mhm.
at the time, exact match domains were extremely important
Yeah,
for their SEO value. So it was something
yeah,
that I was like, oh, I have to have the name of the product in our URL because that's how we're
yeah,
going to get our SEO traffic, and because it was a
for
big
sure,
factor at the time.
for
But I
sure,
guess that just shows how long ago that was.
for sure. Talking on expansion and manufacturing, so you bought the family business. I'm curious, at what point did you guys then expand in manufacturing? At what need was that customer base wise as well?
Well, we originally started out buying and selling filters, but by April of 2013, I realized that the only way to truly scale our business was to be able to manufacture. And it goes back
Yeah.
to the logistical part of it. It's like even importing or even moving via a truck those filters from a manufacturing facility to our facility is expensive.
Mm,
And I realized early on that just the box, they would always come in cases of 12, right? But customers in the retail market or in the online market don't buy in cases of 12. They want to buy in cases of packs of 2 or 4 or 6 or whatnot. So
yeah.
we were effectively throwing away a box, which I called the 13th filter, because that
Mm,
is basically the cost of the box would be the equivalent cost of that of another filter.
yeah.
And so I quickly realized that in order to really get the scale that I wanted and the efficiency that we needed, that manufacturing was the only way. So by
Mm,
April 2013, we started the process of manufacturing.
I see. And with some of the marketing you mentioned, I'm curious with that feedback, what would you say is the main demographic that you're finding coming to search for the filters? I know it's universal, widespread, but I'm curious.
Yeah, our best customers are, homeowners, affluent homeowners that have multiple systems, as well
Mm,
as small businesses. I mean, those are really the kind of two demographics that are the most common for us.
yeah.
Um, and so it's generally people over the age of 35, homeowners in general, and small business owners. Small
Mm,
businesses are really our best customers if you look at kind of revenue, for instance.
yeah.
But in terms of quantity, it's the residential.
Yeah, definitely. To the listeners out there, what does that point of view look like if someone was to go on the site, make a filter purchase, maybe a subscription? What does that look like then in return as a residential homeowner to receive that filter on an ongoing basis? I'm curious, kind of that user experience.
Yeah, so we have a subscription model where we give us a discount if you purchase on a subscription, but we also let you buy one time, so it's completely up to you. We don't force a subscription. The economics of an air filter are such that we actually can pass on more discounts the more that you buy, simply because the shipping is such a large portion of the cost of getting it to the
Mm,
customer, which is why you often hear me say we're in the logistics business, not the air filter business.
yeah.
But we have enough scale now that we get to about 80% of the country next day delivery. So if you order by 2 o'clock, you're getting that filter next day. The rest of the country is 2-day. And we actually have a few markets where we're doing same day delivery. So like in
Wow.
Dallas or Chicago or Fresno, we actually, if you order by 10 o'clock in the morning or so, you'll get your product same day.
Wow. So that turnaround in shipping, I'm curious, in distribution then, do you guys have multiple centers across the US? What does that look like for distribution?
Yeah, we have 7 different distribution points. 3 of them are manufacturing facilities where we manufacture the product, and they feed the other 4 distribution points.
Wow.
But we're shipping every day from 7 different cities.
Yeah. I'd like to get into kind of the more specifics of a filter for those who might not know. But I know you guys do have certain grades of filters. I think it's incredible that you do customizable filters to fit any unit as well. What does that look like? The different grades of filters, like to the listeners out there who are might be unaware.
Yeah, well, I believe we sent you a sample of a MERV 13 filter, and
I
you
love it.
actually are an example of somebody that I think is a target customer because you have a interesting whole house filter in your unit
Yep.
from what I saw.
It's been in for about 5 days now, and I mean, beautiful. It looks beautiful, clean. We have 2 of them here. I'm excited to kind of see the difference as well because we test the air quality here. We have a whole house water filter as well, so it's super important to me. So I'm excited to
Yeah,
see the
well,
difference.
I figured that when I saw the filter that you were using,
Yeah,
but I use you as an example because
for sure.
you got a MERV 13 filter, which is has the blue media now that we just actually rolled out earlier this year as part of the new branding. Unfortunately, the filter you got did not have our nice green frames because we're transitioning over to our new branding company wide, which has been a huge project for us in the
Oh
last
wow,
year. And so most of our product is now in our new green frames with the MERV 13 being that blue media. But
wow.
that is an example of how much we have evolved and how much the market has evolved. That blue MERV 13 media we actually rolled out earlier this year in partnership with Kimberly Clark.
Mm,
It's a higher quality media that does not have as high of a pressure drop on your MERV 13 media, which is important because it allows homeowners like you to use it without it really overworking your system.
yeah,
And like when we first got into the business, a lot of the MERV 13 media that was in the market was good, except for the fact that it really caused your system to work too hard because
yeah.
it was restricting the airflow too much. And so like the MERV
Mm,
13 media, like the media you have, is a new type of media that we just rolled out in partnership with Kimberly Clark earlier this year.
mm,
And that was effectively the impact of COVID on our business in the sense
mm,
that we were already a large player in the higher MERV ratings within the market. It was very niche before COVID, and COVID made it a lot more mainstream, or it really just accelerated what was already happening or the trends that were already happening. And in the last couple of years, I've been very happy with our partnership with Kimberly Clark, who's our media provider, and
mm.
we've rolled out new MERV 13 media that you're getting to enjoy in your house today.
Yep, incredible. So, I mean, I saw some of the milestones in an email earlier, and it was 1 billion within like just years since launch of air filters sold, and think that's incredible. At what point would you say kind of like spiked for you guys, especially? I mean, founding team was just you, as you mentioned, but in a few years later, COVID might have expedited some of that. What was the turning point of growth? Would you say for Filterbuy?
Well, we were on a kind of slow grind higher for the first 8 years. So in 2019, the year before COVID, we did about $70 million of revenue, and that I worked very hard to be able to kind of push that snowball up. But it was a grind, and
Mm,
we had not really reached what I would consider true escape velocity of scale, which you actually need in our particular business. And then COVID happened, and in 2020 we more than doubled in that year,
mm,
and that really and we used that opportunity to expand, and that's when we really opened up our second manufacturing facility and then ultimately distribution centers. And so that
mm,
was really the biggest kind of turning point because there was a period there where there was so much focus on it that our customer acquisition cost was much lower than it ever had been before. So it gave
mm.
us an opportunity to acquire a lot of customers in a short period of time,
Yeah.
and rather than just raising prices and trying to milk it, which a lot of our competitors did, we
Mm,
leaned into it and expanded our capacity, and that customer base pays the bills to this day. I mean, because it's
Wow.
compounding that customer base over time that allows you to build a business, particularly in a consumable product like ours.
Yeah.
So that was really a huge turning point for us.
Hmm. Not sure if you know, like off the top of your head, or you probably do, or you might have before. But what does that acquisition cost look like today? And I'm just curious of how that's adjusted over time.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on channel, right? So that's
Yeah.
kind of an unfair question. You have to kind of
Yeah.
look at it on a kind of granular basis. But we're in the $30 to $50 range for a new customer, kind of depending on channel and depending on what type of customer. But that would be a good ballpark.
Yeah. Looking at the next few years of Filterbuy, I'm curious, what does that business look like in your point of view? I mean, you mentioned the new partnership. That was an incredible milestone that just recently happened. What do you see more opportunities looking like in the future? I'm curious.
Well, I'm on a mission to build the world's leading indoor air quality company. And that's a
Love it.
big reason why I'm starting to do interviews with people like you. And,
Yeah.
we're actually launching a YouTube series called David Heacock Unfiltered, where we're going to take you on this journey of us building the world's leading indoor air quality company.
Mm,
And in order to do that, we're going to expand outside of just filters in that, we're actually have the intent of building a nationwide HVAC service business. And
mm,
we're currently operating that HVAC service business in Florida. I'm down here in South Florida where I live, and we intend to expand that nationwide.
love it. Well, I like to conclude each episode with this. If you can share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned or regret along the way, what would you say that would be?
Focus. Focus is the key. And what I mean by that is you really need to know where you're going, have like a kind of longer term vision of what that looks like, and then be hyper focused on things that are pushing you forward
Mm,
towards that vision, and not getting distracted by things that are not going to push you towards that bigger goal. So
love
focus is the key, and anytime I don't focus, I pay the price. And so I think focus is what everybody needs to be working towards.
Love it. Well, David, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Filterbuy at filterbuy.com.